Hey friends, welcome back. Let's get right into it, because this story has more twists than a country road. The big question everyone's asking is this: did Kody and Janelle secretly team up to take Meri's money? Or was Janelle pressured or manipulated by Kody into signing off on a split before Meri even had a chance to agree? And then there's Robyn. Was she involved too? Because if Robyn wants us to believe she had absolutely nothing to do with any of this, well, that's just not true. Not even close. So, what exactly was this so-called backdoor deal? And why is Meri suddenly so angry with Janelle? Not long ago, things between Meri and Janelle seemed fine. Not warm and fuzzy, but cordial. Manageable. Yet, by the time we get to the tell-all, coming up very soon, everything has blown up. There's a full-on fight over the property and how it was sold. And Meri drops a bombshell. She says Kody took every single dollar of her equity from the sale of her Las Vegas home and handed it straight over to Robyn. Now, to be fair, there's another layer here. Janelle also gave Kody money, specifically funds that went toward Robyn's house as a down payment. That money helped them buy what many fans call the McMansion. So, if Janelle also contributed, why is Meri so furious? It all comes down to legal status, timing, and what Kody did during and after his divorce from Meri. According to Meri's side, Kody used marital assets he shared legally with her, to benefit his new wife, Robyn. And Robyn, meanwhile, is acting completely clueless, wide-eyed, innocent, as if she had no idea any of this was happening. That could be strategic, because if Meri ever decided to take this to civil court, she might actually have a strong case. So, let's rewind and look at how this all started. Back in 2014, when Kody and Meri legally divorced in Las Vegas, they claimed they had no marital assets to divide. None. Zero. Which is interesting because they absolutely owned a home together. That house was purchased while they were married and listed with both of them on the deed as joint tenants. Yet they never formally divided that property, and Kody was never removed from the deed. So, Kody stayed legally attached to Meri's home, while also adding himself to Robyn's house. In practice, he moved in with Robyn, but on paper, he was tied to both homes. He didn't remove himself from Meri's mortgage, and at the same time, he took out a home equity line using shared resources to pay off Robyn's debt, because her house had a lien against it. In other words, Kody managed to position himself as having two primary residences: Meri's house and Robyn's house. Not exactly standard practice. Fast forward to 2018. The home Kody shared with Robyn sold, bringing in about $65,000 in equity. Fans may remember why that house sold so well. It had the nicest upgrades, the most finished backyard, and was clearly the most desirable of the four. They'd put more money into it, and it showed. Then we get to 2019. Robyn needs a new place to live, and Kody is ready to buy again. Conveniently, this lines up perfectly with the sales of both Janelle's and Meri's homes. Janelle's house sold first on April 30th, 2019 for $575,000. Meri sold shortly after, in June, for $574,900, less than $100 difference between the two. Meri's original loan on her home had been just $47,000. While we don't know the exact remaining balance at the time of sale, the home officially closed on June 10, and the debt was fully released by June 26. So by mid-2019, Kody had access to equity from 3 different sources: the earlier sale of Robyn's house, the sale of Meri's home, and money that Janelle directly gifted him. And according to Meri, her equity, the money she believed was hers, was used without her true consent. All of that money from Meri's home sale, it was funneled straight into the down payment for the Flagstaff property. We're talking $225,000. And most of that came directly from Meri. Here's the kicker. Because she never refinanced or removed Kody from the deed during their divorce, he was still technically a joint owner. Legally, he should have consulted her before touching any of that money, but he didn't. He took every cent from her home sale. And here's the frustrating part. When Kody divorced Meri and added himself to Robyn's home, he really should have given up his claim to Meri's property. After all, he wasn't paying the mortgage, wasn't contributing a dime toward it, wasn't building any equity. Meri did it all. But thanks to incomplete paperwork and a little manipulation, Kody still reaped the benefits. He even convinced Meri there might be a chance for reconciliation. Meanwhile, he's orchestrating the finances so he can buy Coyote Pass, and guess what? He can't do it without Meri's money. So, Meri ends up giving all the equity from her home, and she walks away with nothing to show for it. Then, when it comes time to sell Coyote Pass, Kody crafts a backdoor deal with Janelle that sidelines both her and Meri legally. This made it almost impossible for Meri to have a say in how the sale was handled. Here's why it matters. When the Flagstaff property was purchased, Meri was on just one parcel that was split 3 ways. The property she had in Flagstaff was paid for outright, with no lien. But when they paid off Coyote Pass, and the 2 mortgages totaled around $290,000, Meri paid a third, Janelle paid a third, and Kody with Robyn paid a third. In theory, Meri and Janelle should have each received 33% of the proceeds when the property sold. But they didn't. Fast forward to September 2024, just months after Garrison passes away. And this is where Kody's manipulation is crystal clear. He decides he wants to buy a $2.1 million house. But here's the issue. He has a ton of debt, and his liquidity is low. He needs to sell the Hash Knife home to qualify for a new mortgage. Selling Coyote Pass would boost his liquid assets and shield them from any claims Christine might make. So here's the maneuver. Kody somehow convinces Janelle to agree, without Meri's consent, that she and Meri will each get 25%, while Kody and Robyn will hold 50% as joint owners with rights of survivorship. This meant that in September 2024, Janelle essentially signed off on giving Kody and Robyn majority ownership, adding Robyn to the property, and removing Kody from a parcel he owned with Meri. Meanwhile, Meri and Janelle were left with a smaller parcel, around 2.4 acres, while Kody and Robyn ended up controlling the larger joint parcels. All right, let's break this down, because this part of the story is where the backdoor deal really comes into play, and it's a perfect example of how things got messy in Flagstaff. Here's the key point. The parcels of land didn't have to be sold together. They were completely separate, each with its own tax ID. They could have been sold individually at fair market value, but that never happened. No proper appraisal was done. And the value they sold the parcels for was far below what the market would have supported. That's where Janelle comes in. It's safe to say this was likely Kody's idea. Janelle probably just went along with it, without talking to Meri, because, in her mind, she might have just wanted to sever ties with Flagstaff. After all, she had just lost her son. But regardless of her reasoning, she became part of this backdoor deal. Kody, through his real estate agent, found an off-market buyer willing to pay cash. And the property never hit the market. Normally, the process would be list it publicly, allow multiple buyers to submit offers, negotiate terms, and test the market per acre. Instead, Kody cut out the entire process. And here's the kicker. In Flagstaff, land was selling anywhere from about $198,000 to $299,000 per acre. When Kody and company bought the property, it was still a bit of a buyer's market, around $880,000. By the time they were ready to sell, the property could have easily listed between $2.5 and $2.8 million. But thanks to the backdoor deal, Janelle agreed to let Kody and Robyn control 50% ownership, and Kody convinced everyone there was a buyer willing to pay $125,000 per acre. He claimed it was fair market value, which was completely false. He didn't care about a fair price or proper negotiation. He just needed cash. And that urgency crippled Meri's ability to negotiate. Instead of selling the parcels individually, they sold the whole lot off-market to a cash buyer for $1. $5 million total, which came out to roughly $103,000 per acre, well below market. Before realtor fees, taxes, title fees, and closing costs, each party might have walked away with about $375,000. But after expenses, that number dropped significantly. And here's where it gets frustrating. Anyone familiar with real estate would never agree to this. It's like taking a lowball offer on an otherwise desirable property. Kody and Robyn were desperate for cash. Janelle wanted money for her North Carolina house, but Meri wasn't in any rush. She had no reason to settle for less, but Kody's manipulation forced everyone's hand. This wasn't just poor planning. It was a calculated move, and it left Meri with far less than what she should have gotten. The Flagstaff market was booming at the time. If they had properly listed the parcels, even at a conservative estimate of $198,000 per acre, the total sales price should have been around $2.87 million. Instead, thanks to that backdoor lowball deal, they walked away with $1.5 million. That's over $1.3 million left on the table just because Kody wanted cash fast and cut out the proper market process. Now let's break down what this meant for Meri. With a fair, legitimate split by 33%, she should have walked away with about $950,000 before any commissions or closing costs. Instead, she got $375,000. That's a loss of roughly $575,000. All because of Kody's maneuvering and the backdoor deal Janelle signed off on in September, without Meri even being part of the conversation. Kody and Robyn, on the other hand, ended up walking away with $750,000, even though they should have only gotten 33%, because they didn't actually contribute 50% of the purchase price. They only contributed about a third. In other words, the system was stacked against Meri from the start. And here's the clincher. This couldn't have happened without Janelle agreeing to the backdoor deal. Once she signed, it was essentially 75% against Meri, leaving her no room to negotiate. So when people say there was no backdoor deal, that's just not true. Meri's claims hold up, and Kody and Robyn pretending they didn't know or weren't involved? Also not true. Robyn was in the loop in September, and they even tried to strong-arm Meri into an ENDA to keep her quiet. Think about it from Meri's perspective. After years on reality TV, having her equity from her home taken, and seeing Kody and Robyn control most of the assets, she finally has a property she can sell. And it gets lowballed because Kody is short on cash. Wouldn't you be mad too? Janelle, meanwhile, probably didn't lose as much emotionally or financially. That $375,000 was likely enough for her to fund her modest new home in North Carolina. She wasn't living high on the hog, but she didn't get completely screwed either. Meri, however, she got hit hard. And that's why this backdoor deal and all the lies surrounding it are such a big deal. If you step back and really think about it, Meri spent years working on reality TV, building her life in the public eye. And for what? In the end, she has almost nothing to show for it, because her ex-husband and his new wife effectively took control of the assets she helped create. Janelle had promised Meri she'd have her back, that she'd be an ally, but when it came down to it, she didn't. She allowed the sale to be forced, signed off on the backdoor deal, and acted like she was supporting Meri, when in reality, she was working against her. And let's be honest, the sale never went through proper channels because Kody was desperate for cash. That's the cold, hard truth. Do I blame Janelle? Partly. She broke her promise to Meri, played the part of the supportive sister-in-law, but ultimately sided with Kody and Robyn when it mattered most. Even while they were signing off on the sale, she kept up the illusion of being on Meri's side. Meri didn't even fully realize what was happening until after the property sold. So yes, Meri's anger is entirely justified. She got blindsided by people she trusted, and the financial consequences were huge. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this backdoor deal and Janelle's role in it? Drop a comment below. And don't forget, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks so much for watching, besties. Bye for now.